So I'm sorry, I cannot do it in Greek. I could do it in French if you insist, but I don't think that will help a lot. So my name is Bernard Cubizolles. I'm from the big GE, so GE Digital is my division. And my job is to look at my customers' needs for digital transformation. And we wanted to look at it from a different angle today, which is about how can I start my digital transformation or move forward protecting my investments, because this is something I discuss every day with the customers. People have already something installed in their plant, whether it's an HMI SCADA, an MES, and usually they don't know where to start, or they want to start and do a lot of things at the same time and they don't really have a plan. So what I wanted to do is give you a couple of hints and explain how we as GE are looking at digital transformation and what kind of tools we can use. I'm not going to talk about products. If you want to see the products, you go to the Boreas booth in the next hall, next door, B10, and you will see the products. I just wanted to talk about the approach that we have. So first of all, GE Digital, that's part of GE, and the idea was to create a division with all the people who do, let's say, produce software inside the company. So that makes quite a large number of people. And that has been named GE Digital. So it's the division that's 5 years old, and I do all the automation product marketing for them. So if you look at, sorry, I'm going too fast, the need for digital transformation and why it is happening now, that's a discussion I'm having with many people who are in the sort of technical side of the business, on the technical side, and that's not obvious for everyone. That's something we can do today, but that was not possible just like 5 or 10 years ago, probably. And I found this, I was in a bar in the US, and this is the price of a hard disk that was 10 megabytes, it was like 25 years ago, okay? So $3,400 for a 10 megabyte hard disk. And today you can buy USB key, thank you, or USB stick. It's not working, is it? Oh, here we go. 128 gigabytes for 35 euros. So that makes you think that the computing power is just tremendous, right? We are celebrating this year the 50 years of the Saturn V rocket that went to the moon. You know that, right? 50 years ago, 1969. And remember this, they had in this big rocket that was 120 meters long, they had less computing power than you have in your phone in your pocket. And much less. Something like one of their modules was 9 million times less powerful than your phone, okay? So that means we can do tremendous things, and we can do a lot of things with the computing power we have. The next one is the cloud. Obviously, the cloud can help, and that's a mixed discussion with the customers, because you don't necessarily need to go to the cloud at first when you start your digital transformation. The cloud is just a tool, okay? So you don't probably need to go to the cloud and put your data in the cloud when you start thinking about digital transformation, but that will help. There's a third one, that's the price of sensors. The sensors are ridiculously cheap these days. You can buy pressure sensors, GPS sensors, etc. Look at, again, how many sensors you have in your pocket, in your smartphone. You have many sensors, and that's the same for the industry. You can really afford putting sensors on things which have no instrumentation, and that's one thing I will explain later. And there is another one, which is mobility. We performed some studies in the US, especially in Canada. We looked at operators, and especially mobile operators, and we found out that mobile operators are 30% more efficient than operators who just stay in the control room and wait for something to happen, basically. So that explains why so many people now are using tablets, are using smartphones to do the control or do some monitoring from their home or from their office. So the last one is probably the most important one. The others are just tools. But if you look at the different conditions, I have a version of this for every single vertical I'm covering, and I work a lot with the water people. So water treatment has something similar, except that productivity and quality would probably be about availability. But if you look at the food and bev business, food and beverage, it's all about productivity, keeping the quality. It's about risk, which is tremendously important. And it's about reducing cost. I mean, some of you in this room know what I'm talking about. Some of the companies I know in the food and bev industry have some razor-thin margin on their products. So anything that is a grain of sand in the machine can kill the company. So they need to be really careful. And the idea is to plan for the digital transformation for a purpose, right? You don't digitize because you have to digitize. The idea is to plan it like you plan a journey. And in this case, the first thing is to set the goal. Again, conversations with people I know, some customers, they don't really have a clear goal. Or sometimes they want to sort of ride the horse and just start without even understanding what kind of benefits they will get from the digital transformation. So the idea is to look at the main challenges, right? And pick something that's attainable, looking at the outcomes. What will I get from this? And probably pick one that's easy, and then define the steps that will allow you to get there, and plan it as you do a product launch. So have some kind of a roadmap with quantifiable steps. And that's what we do. We have services that will help you understand what are the process improvements, what keeps you awake at night, basically. Is it a quality issue? Is it an efficiency issue? Or is it something about your, I don't know, your scheduling? So there are many, I would say, typical issues that we can address and which are sometimes difficult to identify if you live inside the company, if you are not outside and looking at the various pieces, because you're only concentrating on your own business. So having an external eye sort of on the process will help you identify which one works best. And usually we pick the ones with the shorter return on investment, obviously. So the idea is to say, yeah, I will plan it and I will have these steps that go through the identification of what I want to do. Thank you. Business problems. Then we have a process that goes through some briefings. We have what we call outcome maps. So the outcome maps are usually a meeting with some, stickers on the wall where you can write your issues. And then what you do is that you select the ones which are the most prevalent. And then we put a team together so that these people can help you transfer this into a roadmap. So it goes through some workout sessions, a design, and then put the solution together. But usually this is something that's probably like a few months, not the multi-year project that all the people fear. When I talk to people about digital transformation, they have the impression that this is like an ERP implementation. What you recommend is to do it step by step with, again, goals which are achievable and realistic, not do it everything at once. So what we do is that we look at kind of the maturity level of the customers, and I don't know if you recognize what's on the left. That's a model that's really typical that we've used in the industry for the past 20 years. It was put together by an American university called Purdue. That's why it's referred to as Purdue model. And it starts with the industrial automation, then the MES, or manufacturing operations management, which are kind of different, but let's say MOM, and then the business systems. And at that time, when we created these models, and I was part of the people who created the standards, if you know the S88 and S99, I was a member of these teams that we put together in the US, that were adopted in Europe afterwards. But there is a component that's missing here because it didn't exist. That's the cloud. And all the technology that we have today didn't exist at that time. That's why these models are a little bit, I would say, too short, and they don't have the ambition that we need for today's technology. But anyway, if you look at it from a product point of view, that's really about the, thank you, something. I think the batteries are dead. Thank you. So if you start from the bottom, it's what many people in this room probably know. It's about HMI SCADA. It's about really the control and the monitoring of the plant, alarm management, the other drivers, etc. That's something that has been around for 30 years, right? There's no surprise. And then you have this layer, which is the MES layer, which is about OEE, traceability, etc., which has been around for a while as well. I mean, like probably 15 years or so, maybe 20 years. Interestingly, I don't know in Europe, but in the US, there's only one plant out of 5 that has a decent MES. So there's still room for improvement. And on the right side, you have something interesting. You're talking about the historization, I mean, data collection, etc. And you will see that this is the heart of the problem, actually. Having a good data collection and storage. And then you have everything that's on top, that's in the cloud, with two guys here, which are the asset performance management and operations performance management. So asset performance management, that's not only about preventing maintenance, it's all about understanding what are the main assets, what are the associated risks, and what I can do about the life cycle of my assets to make them easier and performing better. And OPM is about the performance of my process. So these two are more like emerging technologies today, and they are really popular in businesses which are different from food and beverage. APM, our main customers for APM are the airlines. So companies like Air France, KLM, Delta, and guess what? We monitor the jet engines for them. So, good question if you ask me what's the relationship or what's the common point between a jet engine and a machine in my plant. They have a common point, they will fail at some point, right? They will fail, and I want to know when they will fail and what I can do to prevent them to fail, or what I can do to make them more efficient. So there is a lot of common points. So if I look at the sort of virtuous circle, what I call my virtuous circle, it starts with the connectivity, data collection, then archiving, then monitoring. And the interesting thing is on the left side here, what can I do to predict and optimize my processes? And that's the position on this chart that will tell us my maturity in terms of, let's say, a manufacturer. Maybe I just have something that's data collection and HMI SCADA, I have an MES, but I'm missing the left part here. So that's what we are trying to have as a discussion with our customers. How can I move forward, move the needle so that I have more analysis, I have more optimization, and by the way, I can predict what's happening. So this is a chart that I like, not only because I put it together, but I think it's a good summary of the situation for a typical customer, wherever it is. There's another issue which is about interoperability. So I was looking at the agenda and all the presentations you had today, and everyone talked about Industry 4.0, right? You all had presentations about Industry 4.0. I said I'm not going to talk about Industry 4.0, but if you look at the industrial internet and Industry 4.0, one of the key issues is interoperability. And this is, I'm not going to go into the details, but this is a typical situation for the customers who have several plants. You have a plant that was built a long time ago. It has some kind of automation, maybe. You have another one on which you added sensors, so a different level of maturity. And then all of a sudden you buy a plant in the middle of nowhere in China, and they have another type of system, they have another type of automation. And the idea is that if you want to really have a holistic view of what's happening, and for example, do some comparison between the plants, like one of our big customers, P&G, is doing in the US and worldwide, you have to have some kind of unified view of what's happening, right? And it's all about the data behind. And what we do is that we consider that building on top of the existing applications is what is required. So that's why in the title of this presentation, I had something about leveraging my investment or not losing my investment, because many people already have data that they can leverage for their digital transformation that they don't even know about. Okay, and we consider that everything that's on premises already is a source of information, because if I want to do some analysis, probably 80% of the data I need comes from the plant floor. And that means that everything that comes from the HMI, from the MES, from various systems like CNCs, whatever, that's information for me to help me understand the entire behavior and have a holistic view of what's happening. So, a few tips that I wanted to give you before the end of this presentation. One is about choosing a solution that can be deployed on top of existing installs. You don't want to break everything, the human processes, you don't want to stop the plant for 6 months when you install something on top, whether it's an MES, whether it's an OPM or an asset performance management system. That's really important. Number two, it's about the data model. You can only compare things which are in the same format. So basically, if I have a plant that shows some kind of OEE based on certain parameters, and the other plant has OEE but based on different parameters, that will not work. So having a common set of data and the data model will help a lot, and that will help apply my machine intelligence. Another one that's also around data and interoperability, that's about standards. We recommend that our customers use standards because that means that in terms of connectivity, you will be able to expose your data in a common model, and that will help you a lot. That's what this customer I was talking about is doing. So P&G, they take data from different plants. For the moment, they have 50 plants connected with our systems, and they can compare the performance of a line here in the US, a line here in Europe, and they can take the parameters that work best for the other plants and spread these parameters around. There's another one which is about sensors, and because we have all this intelligence now in the cloud, all this APM and OPM software, we can replace sensors with smart sensors. We can add more intelligence on top of these machines, even though sometimes it's difficult to measure. So that's something that we call analytical smart sensor. That's another technology. Something really important is about recording what the operators are doing and managing the manual operations. You know, the main reason why many MES implementations fail is because they don't take into account all the manual operations. So having some kind of work process management, that is key, just to fill the gap and also to prevent the data loss and the knowledge to go away. Think about this. In the US, there are many companies that are looking for people, qualified people, and they can't find them. And all the people who had the knowledge are about to retire. So that means that if you have a work process management software, you can sort of encapsulate the knowledge inside the system and make sure that there's no, let's say, knowledge gap when the people leave, right? So it's more than just making sure that these things are happening the right way. It's also making sure I keep the knowledge in the company. And number 6, it's about hidden data. We always record data, and in the food and beverage industry, sometimes you have to record data for traceability purpose. And think about this, instead of looking at it as, oh, this is really painful, I'm going to use this data for analysis and make sense of the data, as well as data from other systems. That could be data from the employee database, data from the weather forecast. I have a customer in the milk industry, and the data from the weather forecast and the weather data has an impact on his business, just because the milk is not the same during summer and during winter, right? So that's the kind of thing that you can integrate into your system. And last but not least, close the loop between the execution and the analytics. So I think that this one is key. Basically, I have information that I gather from the field, and then I send all this information for analysis, and I need to close the loop on the analytics. So basically send the information back to the plant floor. And that's what the modern software can do. So a couple of takeaways. Become a data-driven enterprise. Obama made a speech, I was kind of, probably 3 years ago, he was talking about all the data that the American administration has somewhere in their drawers. And he said that's kind of a treasure. It's the same for you. As a manufacturer, you probably have data everywhere that you're not leveraging. So think about this when you want to paint a picture of your production, including all the data you have already from the existing systems. So layer the analytics and all their applications on top of the HMI, SCADA, and MES. Consider that this is the foundation for a successful digital transformation. And then understanding the let's say the knowledge that you have in your plant and understanding everything that's in your data, that has a competitive advantage. That gives you a competitive advantage. That's how you can move forward and get this competitive advantage against the other people. Okay, that's about it. If you want to see examples and videos on things live, then you can come to the booth. You can share some use cases with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.